For today's presentation, we'll just kind of walk through why we feel like now is the time to be looking at investing in EV chargers for your properties, how you can take advantage of different funding opportunities that are available for EV charging infrastructure, and then how to get started, things to consider if you're looking at installing EV chargers on your property. Um, so like I said, we think that this is a really timely opportunity for investment in EV infrastructure on multifamily properties. Kind of starting this first bucket is we see resident demand increasing. University of Michigan did a study, a survey, and they found that 58% of renters uh, were willing to pay more for access to EV chargers. Of those surveyed included both EV drivers and non-EV drivers, and this is a trend that we expect to see continue to grow as the number of EVs on the market continue to increase and the used EV market becomes more robust and electric vehicles just become more prevalent on the roads. We expect to see increasing demand on that front from a resident side. We see that installing and having an EV charger installed on property is a great way, especially in kind of the early parts of the transition, to differentiate yourself from other properties in the area. We know that this is especially important if if someone is already an EV driver, they're going to be looking for properties where they have access to EV infrastructure. Charging overnight is a really great perk of having an electric vehicle. And that's something that I know EV drivers or even drivers of plug-in hybrids will look to see if properties have this kind of technology available to them. Is a great way to stand out by offering this amenity. And then finally, we have a lot of empirical data to suggest that installing this technology on your property is another way to increase the value of your property. And then maybe the final reason and the kind of the reason for this presentation about why it's important and why you might want to start thinking about installing EV chargers is that there's a handful of incentives that are available today. And we want to make sure that you all are aware of those incentives and taking advantage of them. The first is a state program offered in Michigan, is the Clean Fuel Charging Infrastructure Program. This is a new program that just got stood up about a month ago, and there's $5 million available to support multifamily housing properties with more than 2 units, and it'll provide funding to install EV chargers on their locations. There's a handful of requirements. The one we highlighted here, probably the most important. There's a 30% match requirement for this, but $5 million bucket available. I'm really excited about that. Yeah, program just got stood up about a month ago. The applications are rolling and will continue until that $5 million is expelled. There's also a handful of tax credits that are available for folks that install this technology on their properties. The Section 30C federal tax credit is the alternative fuel property tax credit. It provides up to 30% of the total value of the project, can be an income tax credit on your annual filing. There are additionally some eligibility requirements based on the census tract that the installation occurs on. And then finally, there are a bunch of utility programs that are available. Probably most relevant to folks on this call, make sure that you're looking at what Consumers Energy utility has available. But if you have properties in other areas in the state of Michigan, DTE, and the co-ops and municipal utilities across the state also tend to offer really robust rebate programs to install EV charging on your properties. To give you a better sense of what those utility rebate programs might look like, again, I'll highlight Consumer Energies just because of their location in West Michigan, but they currently are offering a rebate of up to $7,500 to install an overnight EV charger for resident use. So with these three kind of funding mechanisms, we think, really timely opportunity. All of these programs won't be around forever. So if this is something you have been thinking about or you haven't, but you're now starting to think about, a really great time to start thinking about and making that investment into the EV charging infrastructure on your property. Next, we'll kind of go into some things to consider when you're looking to install this type of technology on your property. For those of you who are maybe less familiar with the technology of EV chargers, there's 3 levels or types of chargers: a level 1, a level 2, and then a level 3 charger, also known as a DC fast charger. They get progressively more expensive. So a level one charger is going to be the cheapest option. A DC fast charger is the most expensive. DC fast charger is the quickest refueling option. We added the caveat down here at the bottom of this image. For a residential use case, level two chargers are the most common choice, both for single family and multifamily housing property applications, because there's a balance there of speed and efficiency and then cost effectiveness of the technology. So a level two charger is going to be the one where you would put it in a parking spot, a resident would use it, they get home from work, plug in. If their car is at 10 to 20% charge, they can plug in overnight and they'll wake up and their car will be full charge or pretty close to it, having plugged in overnight. Um, and so that's typically the focus area. There are certain use cases where a fast charger might be more effective if it's a large scale property with many tenants and also available to the public. There might be a use case there, but for a lot of the programs that I previously mentioned, the focus here is on level two charging. Other things that should be considered when looking to install this technology are the software components of it, connectivity, making sure you're considering if the chargers will have access to Wi-Fi, so it can be connected to the internet, future-proofing these investments and making sure that you're forward-looking to reduce any future costs. And then charger placement is another critical area to consider, making sure that it's the most effective use of the dollars that are available and that you're getting the most bang for your buck and that the residents are getting a good use out of the technology as well. Another thing to consider is how you will structure the revenues from the charger and how you'll offset the operation costs of it. A couple different models here that we've highlighted. These are not the only ones, but typically the most popular ones that we see. The first is a pay per use. This would be similar to using any other type of public EV charger. So an EV driver would be familiar with this model. They could be charged, for example, 20 cents per kilowatt hour for using the charger. Lower costs could be offered if your utility offers time of use rates and offers lower rates for overnight charging or on weekends and things like that. Other models that we've seen that might be similar to models that you all are familiar with other amenities that you might offer at your properties is like a membership model where tenants can pay a membership fee and to have unlimited access to use the chargers month per month, or an integrating the parking, the EV charger parking fee with rent, including an additional fee on rent gives tenants access to the EV charging spaces. And then the last two on here are a little bit different, where it might be a shared ownership model of the technology. The first is a leasing revenue model, where the charging equipment might be owned and operated by a third-party operator, and you as the property owner might be able to lease the space to that third party. And then the last one on here, retail sales revenue sharing agreements, where a charging network provider or third party might again own and operate the technology and then share some of the revenue with the property owner. Obviously things that can be worked out with the charging network provider or the third party that is interested in this. And then kind of finally here, I'll walk through some things to consider. If you are thinking about installing an EV charger, we have things kind of divided into three buckets: the planning phase, the installation phase, and then the operations phase of the technology. On the planning side, again, if you're interested in installing this technology, definitely coordinating with your local utility is important. They have a lot of information that they can share with you. They can provide more information about all of the things that we've covered in the slides prior. And things to consider there. Connecting with an electrical contractor. Again, these people are very well versed in this technology and have done installations for many residential use cases, and so they'll be able to provide some support there as well. And then look through for a charging infrastructure provider, picking the charger that you want to have installed at your property. Assessing resident demand can give you a better understanding about how many chargers you should look to install. Again, thinking about future proofing. maybe not all of your residents are EV drivers or have interest in it now, but as we expect EVs to continue to grow in market demand, we expect that this will continue to grow. So making sure you're finding a balance between supporting your existing tenants with EV charging access, but also looking forward towards the future, knowing that we have these funds available to support financing today. The fact that we pulled on here is that nearly 10% of new car sales were electric vehicles, and again, as the electric vehicle prices continue to fall year over year and the used EV market becomes more robust, we expect electric vehicles to continue to increase in adoption. Some other things to consider on here in the planning process is what the network requirements, if you do decide to pick a charger that needs to be connected to the internet, again, making sure that that is feasible based on where you're planning to install the chargers, evaluate the ownership models that we covered and which one you think best fits your use case, review codes and permits, and then last but certainly not least, make sure that you're applying for and utilizing the incentives that are available for you all to deploy this technology on your properties. On the installation side, making sure that you're coordinating with the utility. This is particularly important on at larger units where there might be multiple units and might require some utility side upgrades to facilitate the number of chargers that you're looking to install. Select the charging site location, and there's some consideration there. Select your vendors. Our recommendation is that you obtain at least 3 quotes from different vendors around charging infrastructure and the network providers and the contractors that you might be looking to use. Obtain any necessary permits that you need, plan for inspections, and then address any specific site needs around signage, lighting, any security measures to make sure that your tenants are able to safely and properly use the technology that you're installing. And then some things to consider around operation after the charger is installed. If it is available to the public, make sure that you're adding it to the alternative fueling station locator. This will make sure that it gets added to like the apps and things that EV drivers use to locate where public EV chargers are available. And again, if it is publicly available, we'll drive more consumers to your location besides just your tenants. Plan for any necessary maintenance. On the chart where we broke down the different types of chargers, level 2 chargers are relatively low maintenance, but can still have issues from time to time. And so making sure that you're prepared to deal with any maintenance issues and so that your technology is operational as often and as frequent as possible. And then communicating with your tenants, again, recognizing that it's likely that not all of your tenants are EV drivers or utilize plug-in hybrid vehicles. Communicating this upgrade to them might make them more likely to purchase their next vehicle as an electric vehicle or other type of plug-in hybrid. And then finally, training any staff that might be able to provide any operations needed on the chargers. All right, and then last thing I have here is just a couple of case studies from examples here. The first one in the city of Detroit, this was a new property construction it's going to provide nearly 100 new affordable housing units in Detroit. And then they also are going to install 80 EV-ready parking spaces for residents and guests. This program received a $200,000 grant from DTE Energy's Charging Forward program. And then in the city of Kalamazoo, an existing location, multifamily housing property, retrofitted their parking spots to add EV chargers, the ones that are actually pictured here. In Consumer Energy's Power My Drive program rebated. The rebates covered up to 90%. They covered 91% of the total cost of this project here. So all of the information that I covered in the presentation is available on a guide that Clean Fuels Michigan released. You can access it via the QR code here, or I can also make sure that the link gets dropped in the chat here in a second. Like I mentioned, Clean Fuels Michigan was interested in presenting today, and we've been connecting with other property owners across the state because there are a handful of really timely funding opportunities available for EV charging. EV charger access in multifamily housing is a gap that's emerging in Michigan's charging network. If you live in a single family property, there have been rebates and programs to get chargers installed at single family properties. And so we want to make sure that residents of multifamily housing are not left behind in the transition, and that they also have access to convenient and affordable charging infrastructure to plug in overnight and make sure that their vehicles are charged and things like that. So appreciate your interest and the time you took this morning to join the webinar. Oh, I see Tracy just dropped the link for the guide in the chat. So you all have it there. I can also make sure that we follow up with you all and can send an email with the link